And finally, we face a real threat from radicalized individuals here in the United States. Whether it's a shooter at a Sikh temple in Wisconsin, a plane flying into a building in Texas, or the extremists who killed 168 people at the federal building in Oklahoma City. America's confronted many forms of violent extremism in our history. Deranged or alienated individuals, often U.S. citizens or legal residents, can do enormous damage, particularly when inspired by larger notions of violent jihad. And that pull towards extremism appears to have led to the shooting at Fort Hood and the bombing of the Boston Marathon.
All right, welcome back to the Steve Malzberg Show. Folks, that cut, I mean, look, he went on, he wants to close Gitmo, he wants to do this with drones. That cut is all over the place. It was purposely misleading, yet at the same time, it was very revealing and raises lots of questions. Well, I forget, whatever cut number that was, guys, remember it because I'm going to use it again and again today. Joining us now to analyze that cut and also talk about the terror attack in London yesterday is Guandolo, the former FBI special agent, our friend who's been on the show before, founder of the security firm Guandolo Associates. Hello, how are you, sir?
Hey, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me, Steve.
All right, now you heard that cut, right, coming in?
I did.
All right, he gives examples of terror attacks here, and he mentions the shooting at the Sikh temple. He mentions the plane that the guy flew into the IRS offices in Texas several years ago, and the Oklahoma City bombing. He purposely mentions non-Muslim perpetrators. Yet at the same time, he mentions Fort Hood as an act of jihad when his own administration classifies it as a case of workplace violence. We just had the congressman from Florida on yesterday, former prosecutor at Fort Hood, who's working to change the classification so the people can get the money they deserve and the status they deserve. So that's a bizarre cut.
Yeah, you almost don't know where to begin with that, except I want to, maybe touch on this one very important point is we know from how the media talking points and actually how they train in journalism schools about the topic of jihad and specifically terrorism is that when you mention Islamic jihad, you always mention non-Islamic, quote-unquote, violent extremism. And so you will always notice, and you even see it on television shows. There was a NCIS episode and other episodes of shows that any time that there's a mention of an Islamic terrorist, quote unquote, you'll get Timothy McVeigh or someone else. And yet those are not rational analogies.
No, and John, to interrupt, I'm sorry, but to interrupt, usually that's what I get from people on the left, callers and or politicians or officials who bring it up as an example of radical Christianity and how it's just as dangerous as radical Islam. And I say, who? And they say, Timothy McVeigh. And I say, he didn't do it in the name of Christianity. He wasn't even a Christian. So they also equivocate, they also bring that up to kind of neutralize radical Islam, which is absurd.
It is. I mean, I like to call it delusional ignorance. I mean, these arguments come from positions of utter ignorance about the facts, number one, of the Islamic movement. And so when people throw that at me, I just say, well, I'm not talking about that right now. We're talking about this subject. So the first thing is they're trying to move off the topic. And second of all, when they talk about the topic, they have absolutely no idea what they're talking about, as evidenced by the fact that this movement we're talking about, this global jihadist movement, it is a massive, well-organized, well-structured, well-funded movement, and people being killed. That nearly every one of the top 40, most wanted on the FBI's list, 39 of them are Muslims. And if we look at the number across the world of incidences of jihad, and you look at the percentage in the United States, it's overwhelming. So the idea that we can equivocate this or equate this to a bank robbery or a guy who flies a plane in the building as the one outlying event it's nonsensical.
Of course, it's nonsensical and interesting. I'd love to hear your take on, there was just a great report that's been done prior, but a great report keeping it in the public eye from the NBC TV affiliate down in Dallas that we played all the bites of, and we had, like I said, Congressman Rooney from Florida yesterday, former prosecutor at Fort Hood, and he's outraged. The victims don't have enough money for food, and yet Major Nadal Hassan, the jihadist, has gotten over almost $300,000 from the government in pay since he shot up the place. And these people can't get what they need and the monies they need because it's not called an act of terror. It's not combat pay. They don't get a Purple Heart. It's considered workplace violence by the administration, and he has the nerve. I mean, maybe it's encouraging. Maybe they'll change it, but I don't think so. He has the nerve to frustrate these people even more if they were watching, sitting at home, trying everything they can to get the classification changed, and he casually refers to it as if it's jihad, then make it right for these people.
Right. I mean, I think the point to be made there is what Major Hassan did. He acted as a jihadi on the battlefield. They view America as the battlefield just like they do Afghanistan and Iraq. When Abdul Hakim Mohammed, the shooter at the Little Rock, Arkansas recruiting depot, killed Private Andy Long and wounded another soldier, it's the same. And they say it. They say this is just, another incident, meaning the jihadis themselves say, I'm doing this because I'm a Muslim and this is required of me. This is part of the global jihad. If only we would listen to them. I mean, I just look at what happened yesterday in the UK.
Well, I want to get to that right now. Yes, where a soldier, an off-duty soldier, mowed down by two terrorists who were on the radar of MI5 in Great Britain. They knew who they were. They were under investigation, yet they were allowed to be free and to mow down a soldier and then decapitate him.
Yes. And what was stunning to me, although I'm surprised that I'm surprised, is Prime Minister Cameron says while they're not sure why these men did this, there are strong indications that it's terrorism. I don't have words to describe the Grand Canyon-sized disconnect between where Prime Minister Cameron is and where reality is. There was a man on television with a meat cleaver with blood literally dripping off it from hacking off the head of the soldier, and he's explaining why he did it, because Allah commands it. And that's what, according to this guy, that's what Islam is, that's what Islam requires. An eye for an eye. And
well, let's let, just in case the Prime Minister hasn't seen it and he's watching at Newsmax.com, or he's got his XM radio on America's Talk Channel 244. Let's go to Cut 26, Will. Let's do them all a favor over there in jolly old England and let them hear 28-year-old terrorist Michael Adeboyiko, whatever his name is. And here's what he said in his, like you say, in his own words on television.
And in Surah At-Tawbah, through many ayat throughout the Quran, that we must fight them as they fight us. An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. I apologize that women had to witness this today, but in our lands, our women have to see the same. You people will never be safe. Remove your governments. They don't care about you.
Okay, and plus, of course, the witnesses all said he was shouting Allah Akbar when they were chopping the man's head off. But, yeah, can't classify it as an act of terrorism.
Yeah, we have strong indication, but we're not sure. And there are several things about this. And those folks, I got some calls today, those folks that read the blog that I did last night. I was in England several years ago at a government facility, at a military facility, where the lead speakers in this multiple-day conference for law enforcement, intelligence, military people, including judges and barristers, the primary speakers, nearly all of them were jihadis. They were from the Quillam Foundation, the Muslim Association of Britain, the Muslim Council of Britain. These are Muslim Brotherhood organizations. And then when I was asked by a few of the members that we met with privately, parliament members and a retired three-star general. They asked, what's your assessment? And I said, my assessment is, unless you all do something significant, drastic in the next year, you're going to lose this. And even a couple of my close friends in the security world over there kind of mocked me. And then, of course, 2.5 years later, I found out they were looking for property in other European countries because they wanted to move. And I think but the point I'm trying to make is you can see this coming. You could see it coming. I believe the UK is lost. And I don't think they're going to recover unless they really do something drastic. But I see zero energy and willingness and intent on the part of the government. And I see a British citizenry that's completely passive to this threat. Now, my experience there was also at the cab driver level and at the local constable level. They had rage for the Islamic community, but that didn't turn into anything practical because just like here, they've got Muslim Brothers and jihadis working with the police units, advising the police
Well,
units.
John, you took the words right out of my mouth. We're talking to John Guandolo, former FBI special agent, founder of the security firm Guandolo Associates here on the Steve Malzberg Show. And that relates to, to me, it's beyond my comprehension to believe that Barack Obama could be sitting there talking about, and he was talking about how we have to work with the Muslim community because they're interested in identifying terrorists and they're interested in identifying anything suspicious, when in fact most prominent quote-unquote Muslim civil rights groups, which we could certainly dispute with what they really are, advise their members how to not cooperate with the FBI, advise their members against turning anybody in, don't want the FBI in their mosques or their schools or their communities, and in fact do the opposite in many cases with that, and do not cooperate. And as you said, Obama cannot not know, double negative there, that offshoots of the Muslim Brotherhood have members in almost every significant department in his administration.
Right, and so you see the parallels of what, I believe England's probably 8 or 10 years ahead of us, maybe not that much. I'd be open to a discussion about that. But all the things they're doing are the things we're doing. As a matter of fact, this idea of violent extremism, that phrase came from the Brits through the DHS and the U.S. FBI when they went over in a series of meetings over there. They came back with this whole plan, and it included this violent extremism working group that got stood up at DHS that comes right out of the UK playbook. So if you want to know where we're going, that's where we're going. Now, we've already seen beheadings in the United States. Muzammil Hassan in New York, as a matter of fact, who created Bridges TV, sawed his wife's head off. And he is a very close friend of Nihad Awad, one of the senior leaders of Hamas in the United States, also known as the Council on American Islamic Relations. We've seen things like vehicular jihad, which is what yesterday was, using your vehicle as a tool for jihad. We saw it at UNC Chapel Hill with Tahir Azar. Remember that young guy who drove over 9 people?
Yep.
And he said, it was interesting. There are so many clues that we miss, and not that I want to get in the weeds, but when he got arrested, he was clean-shaven. When he came and came to his sentencing, he had grown his beard because he had declared himself a jihadi. And he wrote a letter to ABC explaining that Allah commands this, and this is why he did it. We had a case in Fremont, California. There was a case in Texas of vehicular jihad. But our law enforcement and our intelligence community don't know it when they see it because
they're not allowed to. They're not allowed to know it.
You can't get to. That's why when people, I got to tell you, I have a lot of sympathy for the agents who interviewed Tamerlan Tsarnaev and then gave him the pass. You might say, how in the world could a credible agent do that? I'm sure that agent is probably a superb agent.
But he wasn't allowed to ask questions.
Right. Well, it's not that easy. You can't get to that Islam has anything to do with it.
Well, that's what I mean. He's not allowed to ask the right questions. Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, and that's because of groups. Some say it's groups like CARE that have, you know, have rewritten the FBI's training manual and other law enforcement training manuals and taken all those kind of things out. Hey, listen, fascinating conversation as always, John. Thank you very much for your time, sir.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Steve. I really enjoy it.
My pleasure. Take care. That's John Guandolo, ladies and gentlemen.